Matryoshka in Beijing, how Moscow described itself in the capital of the Celestial Empire.
We asked the citizens of Beijing what they would like to see in their park. And then they told us the national symbol, the Matryoshka.
Involve investments and establish cooperation.
The cooperation palette during the days of Moscow is even broader than the years of Russia in other countries.
Russia and Japan exchange here.
Japanese and Russian culture have much in common.
Hello, I'm John Harrison. Good to see you again. Today we're going to look at this city from the point of view of how we foreigners see it. Right now we're in one of the most beautiful streets of Moscow on Nikolsky. It's got something European about it. The same attractive shops, same wide pedestrian zone, the same bright decorations. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of a main shopping street in the capital of Austria. But I wonder, what else has Moscow got in common with other cities of the world apart from its shopping streets?
The text of the good old song about the brotherhood of two great states is still relevant today, just as back then there was no firmer bond. The unity of nations and races is growing stronger.
Today, they are the two most leading countries with high levels of interaction, Russia and China. There are probably no other precedents in history. We are equally looking at all the situations that are happening around the world, whether regional problems, such as with North Korea or Iran, or security issues, drug trafficking, or ecology.
2 years ago, the government of Moscow and the People's Government of Beijing celebrated the 20th anniversary of establishing partnerships. This resulted in signing a memorandum of cooperation and friendly exchange for 2016-2018. This year, a diplomatic document was signed for another 2 years.
Russia and China are neighbors, but the key role in the fact that Russia-Chinese relations are developing so dynamically was played by the friendship between our countries during the middle of the 20th century. The Chinese remember very well who helped them become a great industrial power.
The historic event took place within the framework of Days of Moscow in Beijing. Chinese people admit that these were some of the most vivid and memorable days during the final days of the year. Handcraft workshops, children's wushu competitions, performances by famous Russian artists, photo exhibitions. All this is only a small fraction of what the Chinese were able to see.
I've been here 3 times.
Days of Moscow in Beijing is not merely an opportunity to get acquainted with Russian culture. For many, this is a chance to be back in real Moscow, to taste rye bread or sing a favorite song. The most colourful performances took place on the main street, Wang Fu Jin. It is also referred to as the Beijing Arbat. Here, citizens of Beijing could leave an autograph at a special stand, sample authentic Moscow cuisine, and even paint a plate.
Here are different types of painting. Yesterday, we painted chopping boards using the chokhlama techniques, Gorodets painting. Nowadays, there are more modern types. But in fact, here we have a synthesis of different techniques and different styles, because sometimes it is hard to explain which one it is precisely. Unfortunately, I do not speak Chinese. Therefore, through gestures, through the display of pictures, here are the illustrations. They choose what they want, and the copy paper comes to help us, because they themselves are afraid to draw, afraid to take a chance of causing some damage.
But the main gift was waiting for the residents of Beijing in Chaoyang Central Park. The Moscow Corner was opened there with a traditional Russian toy.
We could not remain without a gift because in 2015, as my colleague correctly noted, a monument was established in Gorky Park in the context of a partnership when we celebrated the 20th anniversary between Moscow and Beijing. And when we were preparing these days, we asked the residents of Beijing what they wanted to see in their park. And they said it was the national symbol, the matryoshka.
Besides the long-term friendship and productive cooperation, every year Beijing and Moscow are finding more and more new points of economic development. The two main focuses are tourism and new technologies.
We have been working with Russia for many years. We have a company also in Moscow. We serve the telecom company China, ZTE, and Huawei Technology to supply the Russia Telecom to give them the equipment to build up the station for the mobile phones. We are very familiar with Russia environment. We also, in earlier years, about 10 years ago, we operate many charter cargo flights into Moscow and to take the Chinese cargo from Yabalu and from Shushui Silk Market. So the Russian market and the Chinese business are very good.
Days of Moscow in Beijing, let's just say, brought a new impetus to the development of our association. So we want to say that quite a number of Chinese tour operators have shown real interest, at least everyone invited by us, and these were more than 30 Chinese tour operators were present. In addition, they brought their acquaintances, friends, acquaintances of acquaintances. That is, and turned out that at some events, let's just say, there was nowhere left to sit.
Experts summed up the ending year, and it turned out that Chinese citizens took first place among all foreign guests visiting Moscow. In 6 months, Chinese tourists made almost 374,000 trips to the capital as Russia as part of tourist groups, which is 20% more than last year. As a famous song goes, Moscow, Beijing, people go, go forward for the path of light, for lasting peace. Thousands of Muscovites will return to visit the capital of the Celestial Empire in 2022. The main goal will be the support of our athletes during their fight for gold medals in the Winter Olympics.
Traditionally, the Moscow delegation takes part in the context of the Days of Moscow, and vice versa, with many cities of the world. We regularly go to Korea, China, Moscow, Beijing, Moscow, Seoul Games, Germany, Italy, and just recently our athletes returned from Tashkent and Belarus. Right now, literally a few days later, the arrival of the Israeli sports delegation is planned, albeit just a small group. But that is the first visit. And the exchange of sports delegations and experience and our specialists takes place on an ongoing basis. I will not list all the countries and cities that are involved in this process, so as not to upset anyone. And believe me, it would take a long time. We have very extensive international cooperation programs in place, because Moscow is open. We have an open city. Moscow, as you've probably noticed, is more than simply a city. Therefore, in terms of sports, we try to keep up with rapid development, and we are pleased to gain from the experience of our foreign colleagues. And if there is such a need, to also share with them. If someone needs it, in terms of high-performance sports, we have World Championships, various World Cups, as well as European and World Championships on a regular basis. Despite the desire that has recently arisen to limit Russia in terms of holding international competitions, in Moscow, a large number of events are taking place on a permanent basis. We play a very active role in this. And the exchange of sports delegations between Moscow and other cities, specifically cities, not countries, since we play the role of a subject of the Russian Federation, do not represent the Russian national team. Therefore, it is mainly at the level of children. Well, not so small children, as they are 13, 14, 15 years old. These are not adult athletes. These are not national teams of the country. And these are not professional athletes, because they have work to do, and they represent the country at international competitions.
Moscow, it's an open megapolis. It does business with countries and cities the whole world over. Now, I've got somebody I know who would like to perhaps tell us how you can do that and to which projects you'd like to perhaps invest money into.
Палитра сотрудничества в ней Москвы даже пошире, чем
The cooperation palette during Days of Moscow is even bigger than for the years of Russia in other countries.
взгляд на Россию в том числе.
The view on Russia is changing, including when the view on Moscow is changing.
Эти дни
These Days of Moscow in other countries, of course, share different facets of Moscow's existence.
бытия Москвы.
And this, of course, is an important aspect. And in addition, a very important component in this regard is the support of compatriots, because under the conditions of such Russophobia, they're experiencing a certain degree of pressure, of course, whether you want it or not, and they have a background of staying close to Russia. And so they do not feel entirely comfortable. The Days of Moscow helps them. It increases the space around them, and they become filled not only with memories, but with the living culture of Russia. Especially since I said a very important theme, a theme of these Days of Moscow abroad, is the Russian language and Russian culture. Culture is our locomotive, our engine, followed by all the other trailers, even economics and innovations. And by the way, what is very important for Days of Moscow, and this is right, it is important to be clarified, when we talk about investments in Russia and Moscow during these days, there are talks about infrastructure to be invested in. And it is very important to clarify that the Moscow government guarantees the leveling of some non-commercial risks. You understand, yes, what I'm talking about? This is very important, because people are afraid sometimes to come with investments in Russia, because they worry about these investments being sufficiently guaranteed, and not from a financial, economic point of view, but namely with different side effects. Well, there are lots of myths circulating around about this. But there is truth. That is why it is very important when, in this case, the Moscow government, if we're talking about the Days of Moscow, it gives guarantees, clarifies and shows. Here is the matrix of the infrastructure of Moscow. You can apply funds here, invest there, and there's approximately such an economic gain from this, and most importantly, the perspectives of the sphere in which you invest.
Over the past 8 years, Moscow has become attractive, and not only in the economic sense of the word. According to the latest statistics, this place has become one of the top 3 places in the whole world to come to. There are a lot of foreigners moving here. Now, who are these people and what do they do?
Luke Jones, a Canadian of British origin, helps Russian applicants find jobs. He's a commercial director of the largest recruitment company in Russia and the CIS. Luke admits that way back in 1991, he was attracted to the Soviet Union out of curiosity.
There was a chance in 91 to come here on a school trip for a week. And then at the institute there was a chance to learn Russian. I studied in Moscow and in Yaroslavl for a semester in 1993, then again in 1994. And we had a look around the country and flew to Vladivostok, then returned by train. And then I graduated from the institute and came here to work. Well, why to Russia? There are 2 main reasons. There is practically no competition here. Here you can earn more because there is a very low income tax and the prices are low compared to Europe.
And also Moscow is a city of unlimited possibilities. Luke tries to tell all his foreign friends and colleagues, Russians aren't that bad, they're just different. He even dedicated a book to it, explaining about why Russians don't smile in public. The book was released only in English, especially for a foreign audience.
The difference between an American and a Russian is like between a peach and a coconut. Because an American is like, well, you chat with someone when you stand in a line and he tells you a story from his life during the first 20 seconds of your acquaintance, but only very superficially. Like a peach, sweet, smooth. But to be friends with him is like being friends with a stone in the middle. And a Russian is like a coconut first. First you knock knock, first he is like, who are you, what do you want? You want to hurt me. This is the first suspicion. But when you become friends with someone here, it's like a coconut inside, sweet, and he's ready to do anything for you.
But one book by Luke or the same World Championship is naturally not enough. Therefore, the already traditional days of Moscow in various countries creates a positive image of the capital, not only throughout the business sphere. The festivals show foreigners that Moscow wants and knows how to be friends. In confirmation of this, a rising flow of tourists. Last year, more than 21 million tourists visited Moscow. In 2017, the capital took second place among the most photographed cities in the world, according to Instagram. For the year in the global ranking, the city rose from third to second place, overtaking London, but losing to New York. And according to the Wall Street Journal, Moscow is one of the 5 most interesting destinations during the Christmas holidays. 2018 was rich in the days of Moscow abroad. The capital of Russia managed to strengthen friendly and partnership relations with another strategically important country, Uzbekistan. The Days of Moscow in Tashkent was held in the format of business communication. The main event was a conference presentation during which members of the Moscow delegation spoke about the most successful projects which are implemented in the city.
Over the past 5 to 6 years, the city has achieved great success in the development of primarily transport infrastructure. Therefore, the International Transport Congress awarded Moscow 1 year ago first place in the development of public transport in the world. And the World Bank placed Moscow and the Russian Federation, namely Moscow and St. Petersburg, in 35th place in its ratings. I want to note that 6 years ago, we were in 120th place. The city plans to be in 20th place by 2020. Moscow, actively developing its economy, has shown that the city is attractive for investors. And, for example, Foreign Direct Investment magazine this year awarded Moscow with 7 nominations at once, including the most attractive city in Eastern Europe in terms of investment.
Moscow and Tashkent are similar. Both capitals are actively developing, focusing on the most important areas of city life.
We, like Moscow, want to move away from the center of rapid development of the city and transition to polycentric development. And we are taking a number of specific decisions aimed at the development of industrial and peripheral zones, and to institute a range of solutions for more convenient living and working.
Moscow has been cooperating with the capital of Uzbekistan since 2017. A program of monetary policy liberalization has been implemented, which is the absence of restrictions for the development of private entrepreneurship and the attraction of foreign direct investment into Tashkent. If earlier, in regards to exporting enterprises, there was a requirement for the mandatory sale of foreign currency earnings to the state in the amount of 25%, now enterprises have the full right to manage currency at their own discretion.
Over the past 2 to 3 days, more than 1,000 people have arrived in Tashkent. Of these, there are about 600 to 700 representatives of business circles, about 20 governors, as well as other representatives of state structures. And due to these initiatives, the initiatives of the leaders of our countries, our regions and subjects of the Russian Federation, have entered into a new phase, a new era of cooperation. This is trade and economic and cultural and humanitarian cooperation.
Days of Moscow in Tashkent were held for 5 days only, but during this time Moscow not only managed to show itself but also to look at how the capital of Uzbekistan lives. A matter of particular interest was a craft which is passed down from generation to generation.
Это вот называется национальное это панно.
This is called the national panel,
Здесь вот орнаменты
the Nagyan. Here are wood carving ornaments, already carved and then drawn upon.
Картина называется
Picture is called the Caravan of Life,
Караван идет между двумя.
and here the caravan goes between two trees, enters in one door, and here is the baby. The mothers are here, and then here is the old man,
Как старик.
the wise old man.
The grand finale of their major presentation at the Russian capital was the grand opening of the exhibition of honored artists of Russia, Sergei and Maxim Sidorenko, the authors of masterpieces of modern oil painting. In the future, both capitals hope to develop not only the creativity of cities, but also high technologies. Between Moscow and Tokyo, there's an almost 7,500 kilometer distance. But Muscovites and Japanese don't need to definitely travel all that distance to understand each other's culture and traditions.
2018 год объявлен прекрасным годом Японии и России.
2018 has been declared the cross year of Japan and Russia by the decision of Mr. Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, and Mr. Putin, the President of the Russian Federation. And this year is being held by countries for the first time. And this is extremely important for stimulating exchanges between our peoples. And it can be said that Japanese-Russian relations have a very long history. But we don't know much about each other. And from this point of view, it is very important to cover not only culture and art, but also business, science, education, and interregional sports and youth exchanges. And by the way, the following words were chosen as the motto of the cross year. There is a Japan that you do not know. There is a Russia that you do not know. As a part of this cross year, more than 600 events have already been booked. And thanks to that, citizens of both countries can communicate directly and understand each other better. Japanese and Russian culture have much in common, and many Japanese truly love Russian culture. The foundation of positive Japanese-Russian relations is an atmosphere of creating trust between our people. And by the way, many people in Russia have deep feelings for our country. Japanese fans who came to the World Cup unanimously spoke of Russian hospitality. And surely many of them will want to come to Russia again.
Многие из них захотят приехать в Россию еще раз. Прекрасный год не заканчивается в этом году.
The cross year does not end this year. It will last until the end of June next year. I think this gives us and others better or more chances to get to know Japan and Russia.
And for some, this city, it's beautiful and wealthy. For others, it's grey and even a little bit dangerous. But one thing's for sure, this place is a city of contrasts. Muscovites, they like to receive people, they're very welcoming. But at the same time, they like to travel, they like to be abroad. And when they come back, they remember these visits and talk about them for a long time.